Today, we're going to spend 20 minutes talking about another very, very hot topic that's out in the world right now, and that's diversity and inclusion. And I'm absolutely thrilled to have my friend and former client, Soraya Wright, with me to help talk us through the important issues, and particularly how they can be relevant for captive owners. Soraya has 30 years or so managing complex risk. She's been the VP of Global Risk Management and Crisis Management at Clorox, and was also president of Clorox's captive. She's a huge champion of diversity and inclusion and helps companies develop strategies and policies and establish protocols. She has served on the Diversity Advisory Board for Clorox, currently serves on RIMS's D&I Council, and is a keynote speaker for diversity and inclusion. Soraya, I'm thrilled that you're joining us today. Thank you very much. I'm excited about the next 19 minutes that we've got together. So over to you.
Thank you, Ellen, for the introduction and for inviting me to just share some information and insights with everyone. So I'm going to skip through this presentation fairly quickly to keep us on track. And it really is to talk about diversity and inclusion as a key risk and focus on why it should be considered a key risk and talk about some current trends and then some things that we should think about as leveraging our captives to help manage some of these issues. So with that, I just want to start to introduce the topic by asking a few questions, and you obviously don't have to answer because we can't see you, but something for you to think about. Does the demographics at your organization look like America? Can you bring your authentic self to work? Are you engaged in your company's D&I strategies and work? Do the people who ascend to the highest level of management within your organization tend to be a fairly homogeneous group? It's just something to think about and to kind of set the tone for what we're going to discuss next. And it really starts with demographics around are just changing and will continue to change. When I started this work back in the early 2000s, we were predicting and demographers were predicting that in America, the minority would become the majority around 2030. And here we are in 2020. And you can see the changes over the past decade. So it's going to continue to change. The talent and labor pool is also shifting. Many baby boomers are starting to retire, and the new generation of workers, they're different in their approach. They're different in what they value. They value balance, work-life balance. They value flexibility. They value technology. They value diversity and inclusion. And so even D&I matter even more today than ever. And when you think about the global marketplace today and how it differs and how we communicate with our customers and consumers, it's changed over the years. Remember when the traditional way of marketing was watching commercials on television. Well, now almost every organization have a Facebook page, an Instagram page, they're on LinkedIn. And the difference is that they're the ability to communicate with key stakeholders and consumers in real time. So this is really changing the way we interact with our buyers. And so connecting with the diverse consumer or customer base is largely dependent on having a diverse workplace, to help deliver the messaging, appropriate messaging, and cultural sensitive messaging, because we are learning that all of these things issues make a difference. So in addition to these other factors, you take a look at what's happened recently. And this isn't recent. Some of the the racial tension. It's been around for a while. What's different is that we now have cameras and social media, so we hear about these things much faster, and it's really in our face. So the activism that comes along with it is making a big impact. So when we think about D&I and what's, the call to action, there's just so much that organizations are forced to do, and we should do. And you think about some high profile issues in the past and even current, the discussion around them, and we don't have to go through all of them. There are many examples. There are a lot of examples that we don't see in the media because these are things that are occurring in, when you think about microaggressions or the ability to attract a diverse group of talent. But they do impact the organization one way or another. And so the lack of multicultural talent is, I believe, a key risk that should be tackled just like any other key risk. Remember when cyber became a big deal, and all of a sudden, there was a lot of activity. How do we address cyber? It's such a big deal. We need to do something about it. Well, I think of the lack of a multicultural talent pool and the lack of inclusion is a risk that should be treated similarly. So the old ways of addressing diversity and inclusion aren't working. And there's a lot of theories around that, but what I want to focus on are the new strategies or things that we believe that are helpful and that would make a difference and is needed right away. And the first is recruiting diverse board members and C-suite leaders. This whole thing about, hey, let's build a pipeline and wait several years until they become C-suite leaders. No, organizations need diverse thought leadership now at the highest level. We also need for organizations to build a pipeline so that, over time, you're still having this effort to recruit and build talent at every level of the organization, and where those voices can be heard, where those voices can contribute. The third strategy is leveraging employee resource groups. And these should be organizations that's not focused on the social aspects only, but really about helping to build the business and support the business. Many organizations that have employee resource group have the perfect opportunity to leverage the insights from a marketing research standpoint, for example. And then partnering with diverse suppliers. Many organizations have supplier diversity programs. And I would say there's an opportunity to fully leverage that. And by leveraging diverse suppliers, that's a way to augment what companies don't quite have right now, but are trying to build. And it's a way to reach those customers and consumers that companies are trying to reach, but they really don't have all of the thought diversity or the folks that can help them reach those key stakeholders. And one thing I will also say about supplier diversity, and one of the things that I'm noticing is that many RFPs are starting to include questions about an organization's diversity strategies and what they're doing to embrace diversity and what they're doing to develop diverse talent. So I'm starting to see trends, and I've heard some examples where companies and organizations have lost out on potential business because they were unable to address those types of questions satisfactorily.
Yeah, just sorry to interrupt. Sorry, you're in a great flow here, but this one really resonates with me too. And I think captive owners have a unique perspective here because they're running a company, and they are, they have exposure to have multiple vendors to help them run that company. Typically, they don't exist in that, the company doesn't have a presence in that domicile where they have a license. So they need to hire a captive manager, an auditor, an actuary, etc. And I presume what you're saying is they could take that extra step and make sure that their vendor program is in line with their diversity and inclusion program, or go one stage further if it's not yet prevalent in the company.
Exactly. And, and some of the questions I've seen have been pretty pointed, where they're asking, to share, what are the trends? What are the numbers? What does your board look like? What does your leadership team look like? The makeup of it? And what is your plan to build, a diverse workforce? So I think it's a big, it's something that we'll see more of, and it will become more prevalent. And I think it is something that we should be thinking about now. It's like how, as suppliers or consulting firms, how are we going to address those questions when they're asked? And then on the buyer side, the customer, the captive owner side, you're in the perfect place to even drive this further and to help lead the effort to push for diversity and create opportunities for many of the smaller organizations that are out there that's able to recruit great talent and deliver great services. So I think, if it's something that organizations haven't thought about, this is a great opportunity and a great way to start building those bridges and bringing in the talent almost immediately, because many of these and I would call them the certified businesses, diverse businesses, have they just have the profile that is desirable. Mm-hmm. So it is important and an important strategy to consider. So, all of this is to say, I think it's important when we talk about diversity and inclusion, it really is about creating a culture of inclusion. It's not about saying, okay, let's just change the whole makeup of the organization, and it's time to hire, just all Black and brown people, and then, we don't value anyone else. That is not what it is. It is about leveraging thought diversity, bringing and creating this whole culture of inclusion. So some of the trends that are starting to take place, and you're seeing it as a result of some of the recent events where companies are adding chief diversity officers, where organizations are adding more Black and brown people to their boards. We've seen articles where even Lloyd's of London acknowledge, some of the involvement in the slave trade years ago. So there's just a lot of activity companies are giving to organizations to fight social justice. And, this is also an indication that, this isn't going away. We will see more action, and there will be an expectation that all of us are engaged in companies with big social responsibility programs, that do all the great things for the communities they operate in. Well, communities are going to expect those organizations to weigh in to some of these issues that are being presented. So I just mentioned, it shared the display of photos that talked about some of these current trends. And almost every day you hear about them. If you monitor LinkedIn, you see articles all the time. And if you don't see them, then it's time for you to start connecting with people who would probably have information in their feeds about what's happening and what's relevant today. So how does all of this tie into captives? Ellen and I worked together for so long, and we've always been creative and think about, okay, how can we leverage the captive to deal with certain things? Well, I think this is the prime time to look at your captive strategy and see how you can help your companies address some of the costs associated with, a lot of the initiatives that are taking place or issues that are happening. And when you add COVID-19 on top of it, and you have, many employees that are working from home, and there are natural disasters, and thankfully I'll knock on something that we haven't had many big ones so far this year. And here on the West Coast, we'll be facing fire season pretty soon. So you think about all of those things and think about your risk finance strategy there. It starts with a question. I wonder if we could leverage the captive to fund some of these risks that are either difficult to purchase in the commercial market or unavailable. Wonder if we could leverage the captive at this time to increase our retentions and maybe focus less on some of these areas that are working pretty well and well funded and and with predictable risk, to address some of these risk areas that are emerging. So I do think that this is the time to look at, how you're leveraging your captive and working with your captive managers to have those discussions. I think it's also the time to look at how you're conducting business. What can you do to help bring more diversity into your organizations, and how can you leverage your captive to build that bridge and help build capabilities from a talent standpoint. And so I do think it just starts with a discussion, and I think there's everything that we do and we think about with our captive. Our captives and what we're funding and how we're leveraging it, it just starts with a question. And so I would encourage all of you to start those discussions. It's like, okay, we're having these issues. Some companies are having marketing issues. How maybe we fund the deductibles on some of these things. So I'll just really want to encourage you to think about, what are some creative ways to leverage this vehicle to help your organizations and captive managers. What are some things and some ideas that you can toss around and discuss with your clients to help them think about how they can help their organizations navigate through these emerging issues.
Yeah, I mean, the example you gave earlier around cyber, everybody was scared to death to put cyber in a captive initially because we didn't understand the risk. It was emerging. Well, you've hit the nail on the head there, I think, because this is, it is an emerging risk, and that's what a captive's there for. It's a super cool instrument to help you. You may not be able to find a way to use it, but you're right. Start with that conversation and get on the cutting edge of using the captive strategically, because that's what it's there for.
And get engaged in the discussion about diversity and inclusion, because if you're not engaged now, this is a great way to get engaged and gain a seat at the table and discuss the risk issues and mitigation to help companies, because so many leaders are trying to navigate through it and figure it out. So, and this is my last slide, and I'm just gonna just kind of conclude things by saying I used to say that talk about building the business case for diversity and inclusion, and I would say that research show that companies that embrace diversity and inclusion are more profitable. And then I kind of migrated to companies a couple of years ago, organizations that with effective D&I strategies will have a competitive advantage. Well, with recent events and all of the things that are going on, I now say organizations need effective D&I strategies in order to survive.
That's a great closing comment, and thank you very much for your thoughts, Soraya. As always, we've run out of time for any questions, but if you do have questions, you know where to find me. You can reach out. There's my email address. There's the contact information for this particular series as well on the website, and Soraya's contact details will post as well on that website there. Thank you for joining, everybody. Thank you again, Soraya. It was a real pleasure having you on the show, if you will, and look forward to seeing everybody again. The next session will be in August, and have a wonderful rest of your day, folks, and a great weekend. Thank you.